The train platform in Copper Springs, Wyoming, stood empty except for one woman and the dying hope in her heart. Martha Sullivan clutched her worn carpetbag and watched the last of the other mail-order brides disappear into wagons with their new husbands. 7 women had arrived on the morning train. 6 had been claimed within the hour, swept away by eager ranchers and miners who'd paid good money for the matchmaking service back east. Only Martha remained. She was 32 years old, practically ancient by frontier standards for a first marriage. Her auburn hair was streaked with premature gray, and her hands bore the calluses of hard work. The matchmaking agency had been honest about her prospects. She was the practical choice for a man who needed help more than he needed beauty. The problem was, her intended groom hadn't shown up. "Ma'am?" The station master approached, his weathered face creased with concern. "It's been 3 hours. I'm afraid I'll need to lock up soon." Martha squared her shoulders. "Is there a boarding house in town?" "There is, but—" He hesitated. "Miss, the man who sent for you, Jacob Brennan, he's a decent fellow. Something must have happened. His ranch is about 10 miles north. If you're willing to wait until morning, I can arrange transport." She nodded, swallowing her humiliation. Another night of uncertainty. Another day of wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake leaving Boston. The boarding house smelled of lye soap and boiled cabbage. Martha ate alone in her small room, staring at the faded wallpaper and questioning every decision that had led her here. Back in Boston, she'd been a housekeeper for a wealthy family, respectable work, but lonely. When Mrs. Henderson had died and the family decided to sell the house, Martha found herself unemployed at an age when prospects were slim. The advertisement had seemed like providence. "Widowed rancher seeks practical woman for marriage and partnership. Must be hardworking and of good character." Now she wondered if Providence had a cruel sense of humor. The next morning, a knock on her door came earlier than expected. "Miss Sullivan?" A young boy stood in the hallway, his hat clutched nervously in his hands. "I'm Tommy Brennan. My pa, he sent me to explain." Martha's heart sank. Here it came, the rejection she'd been expecting. "Your father changed his mind?" "No, ma'am." The boy's eyes widened. "Pa wants to marry you real bad. He's hurt. There was an accident 2 days ago, and he didn't want to come meet you looking all busted up. He was afraid you'd take one look and get back on that train." Something in the boy's earnest face touched Martha. "How old are you, Tommy?" 11, ma'am. It's just been Pa and me since Ma died 4 years back." "What happened to your father?" "Horse threw him into a fence. Broke his leg and messed up his face pretty good. Doc says he'll heal, but—" Tommy's voice dropped. "Pa was already self-conscious about his scars from the war. Now he thinks he looks like a monster. Said no woman would want a broken-down cowboy like him." Martha felt a shift in her chest, a softening of the hard shell she'd built around her heart. "Take me to him." The Brennan ranch was modest but well-maintained. The house needed paint, and the barn leaned slightly to the left, but Martha could see the bones of something solid. Chickens pecked in the yard, and a milk cow watched their approach with bored interest. Tommy led her inside, where Jacob Brennan sat in a wooden chair by the fireplace, his leg propped on a stool. His left cheek bore the purple and yellow bruises of recent injury, swollen and angry. An older scar ran from his temple to his jaw on the right side, a war wound, she guessed. His eyes, however, were a startling blue, and they held a mixture of hope and dread as she entered. "Mr. Brennan." Martha set down her bag and approached him directly. "I'm Martha Sullivan. I believe we had an arrangement." He tried to stand, winced, and settled back down. "Miss Sullivan, I apologize for not meeting your train. I should have sent word, should have given you the choice before you came all this way. I understand if you want to leave." Martha studied him carefully. His hands, gripping the chair arms, were shaking slightly. This was a proud man, humbled by circumstance, terrified of rejection. She knew exactly how that felt. "Mr. Brennan, may I be frank?" "Please." "I am 32 years old. I have gray hair, rough hands, and a face that's never turned a single head. The matchmaking agency told me I was lucky to have any prospects at all. I came here expecting to be useful, not admired. She pulled off her gloves, showing him her work-worn hands. I came here to build a life, not to be courted like a schoolgirl. Jacob's eyes never left hers. You're more than I deserve, Miss Sullivan. That's presumptuous of you, considering we've just met. But she smiled slightly. Tell me about this ranch. What needs doing? Over the next hour, Jacob talked. He told her about the cattle, about his plans to expand the herd, about the irrigation problems in the south pasture. He told her about Tommy's schooling, about the crops that had failed and the ones that had succeeded. He spoke with intelligence and passion, and Martha found herself leaning forward, asking questions, offering suggestions from her own experience managing a large household. Tommy brought them coffee, and Martha noticed how the boy watched his father, protective, worried, hopeful. Mr. Brennan, she said finally, I propose we proceed as planned, but with complete honesty between us. You need help running this ranch and raising your son. I need a home and a purpose. Neither of us is a prize catch by society's standards, but perhaps that makes us well matched. Jacob's damaged face broke into a smile that transformed it entirely. I'd like that, Miss Sullivan. I'd like that very much. They were married 3 days later by the circuit preacher, with Tommy as their witness and the station master's wife providing a simple wedding cake. Martha wore her best dress, serviceable gray wool, and Jacob stood with the help of a crutch, his face still healing but his eyes bright with something Martha was afraid to name. The first weeks were an adjustment. Martha threw herself into the work with fierce determination. She scrubbed the house from top to bottom, organized the chaotic kitchen, mended curtains and clothes. She learned to collect eggs without getting pecked, to milk the cow, to manage the temperamental stove. Jacob watched her with quiet appreciation, offering help when he could despite his injury. He never demanded anything from her, shared her bed in name only, sleeping on the far edge of the mattress like a gentleman, never presuming on their arrangement. At night, Martha would lie awake and listen to him breathe, this stranger who was now her husband, and wonder if companionship was enough. If partnership could ever become something more. Tommy was the bridge between them. The boy was starved for a mother's attention, and Martha found herself softening in ways she hadn't expected. She helped with his schoolwork, taught him to bake bread, listened to his endless stories about the ranch animals. Through Tommy, she learned about Jacob, his kindness, his integrity, his bone-deep loneliness. 6 weeks after their wedding, everything changed. A late spring storm rolled in with fury, bringing hail and high winds. Martha and Tommy were securing the chickens when they heard the crash from the barn. They found Jacob pinned under a fallen beam, his healing leg trapped, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead. Tommy, run for Doc Miller! Martha commanded, then dropped to her knees beside Jacob. Don't you dare die on me, Jacob Brennan. Don't you dare. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused. Martha? I'm here. I've got you. She couldn't lift the beam alone, but she could stanch the bleeding, could keep him conscious, could pray harder than she'd ever prayed in her life. I'm sorry, he whispered. Broken Cowboy, should have warned you. Hush. Martha pressed her hand to his cheek, the scarred one, the one he always tried to hide. You're not broken. You're the strongest man I've ever known. Didn't want you to settle. Jacob Brennan, I haven't settled for anything. I've found everything I didn't know I was looking for. The words poured out, urgent and true. I've found a home. I've found a son. I've found a partner who treats me with respect and kindness. And somewhere along the way, you stubborn, wonderful man, I've found myself falling in love with you. His eyes focused on her face, wonder replacing the pain. Martha. So you hold on, do you hear me? Because I'm not done with you yet. Doc Miller arrived with Tommy and 3 neighbors. They freed Jacob, patched him up, and pronounced him battered but whole. The leg had survived, though it would be weeks more of healing. That night, Martha sat beside Jacob's bed, holding his hand. Tommy was asleep in his own room, worn out from fear and relief. Did you mean it? Jacob asked quietly. What you said in the barn. Martha looked at their joined hands, hers worn from work, his scarred from a lifetime of labor and loss. Two imperfect people who'd found each other through circumstance and desperation. Every word, she said. Though I understand if you don't. He pulled her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. Martha Sullivan Brennan, I fell in love with you the moment you walked into this house and looked at me like I was worth something. I've been too much of a coward to say it. We're a fine pair, Martha said, laughing through sudden tears. Two people convinced they weren't worth wanting. And yet here we are. Here we are. She leaned down and kissed him, their first real kiss, tender and full of promise. When she pulled back, Jacob's eyes were wet. No one wanted the last bride, he said softly. Best thing that ever happened to me. Martha smiled and settled beside him on the bed, careful of his injuries. I think we were both the last choice. And somehow, that made us exactly right for each other. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving the air clean and fresh. Inside, two lonely souls had found their home, not in perfection, but in the beautiful, messy reality of acceptance and love. The ranch would thrive in the years to come. Tommy would grow strong and good, eventually bringing home a bride of his own. And Martha and Jacob would grow old together, their love deepening with each shared burden and joy. But it all began on that train platform in Copper Springs, where no one wanted the last bride, until a broken cowboy looked past appearances and found his perfect match. Some love stories begin with pass.